Many people ask me, what does it matter if Joseph Smith used a peepstone or practiced polygamy? What does it matter if the Book of Mormon is historical? Or they might even say, even if the LDS Church isn't true, it's a great way to live and it's a great way to raise your family. While I totally agree that for some people, the church provides a great experience, and I've met so many amazing families that have come out of Mormonism, what I want to call attention to in this video is that pretty much everyone who joins the Mormon church, whether it's a kid or a youth that's born in the church, or whether it's an adult that converts to Mormonism, they are all converted to the Mormon church based on the claim that it's the one true church on the earth, not merely on the fact that it's good or just a good way to raise your family. When a child or a teenager is raised in the church, or when an adult talks to the missionaries and is converted to the Mormon church, they are taught the following things. They're taught that the Mormon church is God's one and only true church on the earth. They're taught that the current LDS church and its leaders speak directly for God, along with its local leaders. They are taught that other churches are false or inferior. They're taught that only Mormon baptisms count in heaven. They're taught that only Mormon marriages count in heaven. They're taught that the Book of Mormon is superior to the Bible. They're taught that the Book of Mormon is an ancient history of the Native Americans. They're taught that the Native Americans were cursed with dark skin because of their wickedness. They're taught that for the most part, women should not pursue their education too far or make too many plans about their career because their most important job is to stay home and be mothers and wives. Mormon youth are taught that they need to dedicate 2 years of their lives to serving a mission, delaying their education. When you return from your mission, you're taught that you should get married immediately, as fast as you can, and have as many kids as you possibly can. Mormon youth are taught that premarital sex is next to murder in terms of sin. Mormons are taught that being gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender is evil in the eyes of God. Mormon children, youth, and adults are taught that they should give 10% of their income for the rest of their lives to the church, and that no matter what, you should always raise your children in the church to believe as faithful Mormons. In summary, all of this matters for two main reasons. Number one, the terms of the contract for which people join or stay in the church are based on the church being true, not just on it being good. And second, incredibly important life decisions are made within the context of the church, again, not based on the church simply being good, but on the church being exactly what it claims to be. We're talking decisions like how much education to pursue, if at all, what types of careers to pursue, if at all, who and when to date, who to marry, when to marry, who to exclude from your wedding ceremony, how many children to have, giving 10% of your income away for life, giving your reputation to the church, giving your time to the church, giving your very life to the church. These stakes are incredibly high. You might say, many people have great experiences within Mormonism, so it doesn't matter. Or you might say, but the church creates great families. But if you say that, you're missing the point. It is fundamentally immoral to sell or indoctrinate someone into and to have them build their entire lives around a system that is so demanding and so comprehensive under false or misleading pretenses. If you claim that the Mormon church is true, you better be right and you better be able to prove it. Because while it's true that there are some people and some families that are raised within the Mormon church that have good experiences, it is also true that there are many individuals and many families that are irreparably harmed by their participation in the Mormon church. This list includes youth who are tormented and sometimes scarred for life due to the guilt and the shame that they experience as teenagers around matters of normative sexuality. Girls, young women, and women who decide not to pursue certain levels of education or not to pursue certain careers because they're taught that their primary goal and their primary mission in life is to get married, have as many kids as possible, and support their husbands in their careers. This list includes girls and young women and full-grown women who somehow get the message that they're inferior to men or not as capable as men because of the way that patriarchy works within the church. This list includes young Mormon couples that get married way too soon, way too fast, after barely knowing each other, having way too many kids way too soon, and then they find out later that the church isn't what they thought it was. Or they find out that they're fundamentally incompatible. And by that point, it's far too late, and many of these decisions are totally irreversible. This list includes Mormons of color, African Americans, Africans, Latin Americans, Pacific Islanders, Hispanics, who grow up because of the messages in the Book of Mormon and the Book of Abraham, and because of past statements by Mormon leaders. They grow up thinking that their dark skin is ugly. This list includes gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender Mormons who grow up believing that their very nature is sinful and dirty and wrong. They grow up believing that who they choose to love and who they choose to spend the rest of their lives with is wrong. Many of them choose lives of celibacy that are incredibly harmful. Others choose to enter into mixed orientation marriages that are also proven to be incredibly unhealthy, with very high rates of divorce that can negatively impact themselves, their straight spouses, and the children that come along afterwards. All of these complicating factors help to explain why LGBTQ suicide rates within Mormonism are egregiously high and totally unacceptable. And honestly, people who promote the truthfulness of Mormonism at the expense of LGBTQ youth and adults are probably somehow complicit in the harm that's being caused to this population. This list includes all of the time, all of the money, all of the lives that are voluntarily, in good faith, given to the church under the pretenses that the church is true, that the church is everything that it claims to be, which, if the church isn't actually true, and if it's not everything that it claims to be, means that these sacrifices are given to the church under false pretenses. I repeat, it is fundamentally immoral to lead someone into such a high demand, high expectation, potentially harmful religious system if they are led there under false pretenses, especially when so much time, so much money, so much reputation, and exact obedience, along with so many families, are at stake. President and prophet Gordon B. Hinckley once said, "Well, it's either true or false. If it's false, we're engaged in a great fraud. If it's true, it's the most important thing in the world." Now, that's the whole picture. It is either right or wrong, true or false, fraudulent or true. Mormon apostle and first presidency counselor J. Reuben Clark said something very similar. He said, quote, "If we have the truth, it cannot be harmed by investigation. If we have not the truth, it ought to be harmed." In 2020, we now know that as LDS church members, we have been systematically and in some cases intentionally misled by the leaders we gave our trust and devotion to for over a century about so many things, about who the Native Americans actually were, about dark skin being a curse from God, about Joseph Smith's use of a peepstone, about Joseph Smith's involvement in treasure digging, about the authenticity of the Book of Mormon and the Book of Abraham and the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible and all of the core Mormon scriptures, about Joseph Smith's practices of polygamy and polyandry, of marrying underage girls, of marrying other men's wives. There are so many things that we have been intentionally and systematically misled about by leaders that we trusted. At this point in 2020, it is not the critic's job to prove that the Mormon Church is false. If the Mormon Church wants to change from being God's one true church on the earth, from being true to being just one of many good churches on the earth, to being a good option, an option for many, a great place to raise your family, a great place to serve, it must do at least 4 things. Number 1, it needs to stop demanding so much time and obedience and money and efforts from its members. Number 2, it must stop harming so many individuals and so many families. Number 3, it must follow its own steps of repentance, which includes forsaking the sin, making amends, making restitution for the sin, confessing the sin, and letting everyone know, including its current members, that it had misled them, that it had not always told the truth, and that it is changing its position explicitly from being true to being just one of many good options, so that people who are raised in the church and the people who join the church don't do so under false pretenses. So, to summarize, as long as the Mormon Church is making such absolutist truth claims, as long as the Mormon Church claims to be the one true church on the earth, as long as the Mormon Church is harming so many individuals and so many families, it is not simply good enough for us to say, it's okay. The church provides a good way to live. The church is a great place to raise your family. And more importantly, whether or not Joseph Smith did use a peepstone, whether or not Joseph Smith was a treasure digger, whether or not the Book of Mormon is historical, whether or not this is the one true church, whether or not God does give people with dark skin a curse. These things matter. The history and the doctrine absolutely matter. People base their lives on the stories in the history and on the doctrine they're taught. So to conclude, I absolutely believe that it's essential to figure out for yourself whether or not the LDS Church is true, whether or not the LDS Church is what it claims to be. And the history and the doctrine and the theology absolutely matter. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please share your comments and experiences in the comments below. Please email us at understandmormonism@gmail.com if you have feedback. And please share this video with as many people as possible. I'm Dr. John Dehlin. Thanks, everybody. Take care.